Clarity, the greatest gift you can give. This week I've been telling you how to get clarity in your business. Now let's talk about how to give clarity to your staff, to your clients, and to your entire audience. Everyone around you wants you to be reliable. They want you to do things the same way every single time. They want you to be predictable. They want you to apply yourself fairly to everyone. And they want you to be clear to help them gain direction in their lives through your expertise, one step at a time. So here's how you do it. Let's start with clarity for your clients. You need to provide the same excellent value to everyone. That means your operations must be excellent always for everyone. That means your prices should be the same for everyone at each service level. No discounts, no special deals, no trades, no "I'll tickle you there if you kiss me here" deals. That means clear and even application of your policies, rules, and standards. If your policy says 2 weeks notice for cancellations, you have to uphold that rule every time. Otherwise, you have no rule. If your policy says class starts at 7 a.m., you have to start at 7 a.m., not 7:02. Because if you don't start at 7 a.m. every time, you don't start at 7 a.m. ever. If your standard is squat below parallel, then you have to squat below parallel every time for the rep to count. Every time. If one rep is a maybe, then every rep is a maybe. If a client is negatively affecting the experience of another client, he or she has to go. If you don't have clear values, then you don't have values. Now let's talk about clarity with your audience. Are you a coach or are you a functional movement specialist? Everyone knows what that first thing is, a coach, but nobody knows what that second thing is. Maybe you're trying to say, I'm different from other fitness coaches. I have more education, more experience, I'm evolved. And maybe other fitness coaches can tell the difference between a core vibration expert and an animal utilitarian movement expert level 3 certified. But other fitness coaches are not your audience. Your audience needs to know, that girl can help me lose weight. Your audience doesn't need to figure out what your logo means, what your name means when you take all the vowels out, what your certification means, what your philosophy means, what your religion means. They don't. When they look at you, do they see themselves? Do they say, people like me do something like that? And what they see or hear when they look at you, that's your brand. Clearer brands are better. Finally, let's talk about clarity with your staff. First and foremost, you have to get everything out of your head and onto paper. Because no one can read your mind, but everyone can read a book. Nobody sees things the way you do, but they can see it if it's on a page. There's no such thing as common sense, but there is such a thing as text and pen and ink. Now, if you've been unclear with your staff in the past, you've got some detangling to do. And that's okay. You'll have to edit the things you've told them before, or maybe stuff that they've tried to figure out on their own, and then put them on the right path. That should come as a relief to everyone, but change is tough. If you need to radically edit what they're doing, you're going to have a tougher conversation. This is my weakness, but I'm trying hard to make it my strength. So here's what I've learned. First, I hate confrontation. I build things up to be too big in my mind. I'm a people pleaser, and I want everyone to like me. And I know that arguments usually distract me from doing the real work. I can't resist them when they happen, so I just try to avoid them. But as I grew from founder phase to farmer phase to tinker phase on my entrepreneurial journey, hard conversations became more important, and they just got harder. As a founder in the gym business, firing a client was very hard. There were hundreds of dollars at stake, which was big money back then. But more important, I worried about the client's reaction. How would she feel? How would she react? What would she say in my gym? What would she tell people on Facebook? In the farmer phase, I had to start managing staff. That meant evaluations and correcting their actions and even firing a couple of people. Those conversations were harder by an order of magnitude. The decisions affected the staff person and their families, and sometimes my clients too. And in the tinker phase, every conversation set the precedent for the company, for hundreds of clients, and for dozens of staff. Most decisions were held with tens of thousands of dollars in the balance. Some literally had hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting there, depending on which way I went. And some were more important than any amount of money. One of my mentors, Marcy, was chosen precisely to help with leadership. And leadership means having hard conversations. On our very first call, a couple of years ago, Marcy told me, "Chris, sometimes you're being tactful, but sometimes you're just hiding." And it's true. Sometimes I do avoid tough conversations and tell myself to cool off for a bit or think about how you're going to phrase this politely. Both are wise advice, but not when they're avoidance techniques, not when you're hiding. Thanks to years of experience, dozens of hard conversations, and Marcy, I've learned a lot about hard conversations. So here are some things to keep in mind for context before you start a hard conversation in the attempt to bring clarity to a staff person or audience member. First, anticipation is always worse than the event. The build-up before the conversation is stressful, the conversation itself is not. Second, every tough conversation you have is just practice for a tough conversation in the future when the stakes will be higher. So don't worry about blowing it. You're not going to be perfect. Third, people aren't really paying much attention to you. You might be staying up all night worrying about the big talk you have to have with Karen, but Karen probably isn't. Fourth, the greatest gift that you can give the other person is clarity. Respect him or her enough to say what you mean. Here are my action steps if you have to have one of these tough conversations to bring clarity. First, hold the conversation at the highest possible level of the communication hierarchy. So face-to-face is best. If that's not possible because of geography, use a video call so that you can see each other. And if that's not possible, call on the phone. Email is really poor for hard conversations because it's hard to read intent into the written word, and text should never be an option. Second, be sure but act quickly. Get the facts. Be aware of procrastination strategies like, "I need more information," or "I need more opinions." This isn't a democracy. You need to act to lead. Third, avoid emotional language. "I feel like," and "I think you should," completely dampen your message. And they say, "I'm unsure." Fourth, if you're talking to a staff member, a client, or a friend you'd like to keep around, work through this next step. If you're going to end your relationship, you can skip it and go to number 5. So let the person release emotion first. Picture the person's anger, frustration, or sadness as this big black balloon that's floating between your faces. You can't really see each other while the balloon is there, so you need to let the air out of it slowly. Get right to the heart of the concern by asking a pointed question. "So, you're worried about the rate increase?" And then let him or her vent all of their emotions. The balloon will deflate a little bit, and then you need to poke it again because you want it completely empty. So you ask, "You're concerned you won't be able to afford the gym anymore?" You might have to poke it a third time. Only when the emotional content of the speech is gone can you begin working on a solution. And this was outlined in Chris Voss's excellent book, Never Split the Difference. Fifth, then lay out your case clearly. More words don't make people feel better, Seth Godin wrote in This Is Marketing. If you're breaking up with a person, start the conversation with, "We're breaking up." If you're removing the person as a client, say, "I'm so sorry this isn't working out. We do our best to please every client, but we're just not a good fit." If you're firing the person from your staff, say so. Don't do him or her the disservice of hiding behind stock language like, "We're going another direction." Say, "I can't have you coaching anymore because you haven't corrected X and Y." Sixth, give the person a cool down period. I'd like you to take a day or two before you respond. Think about what we've said, and then if you want to talk some more, we can set up a phone call. In the meantime, I promise to be discreet about this conversation and trust you'll do the same. There's a lot more to it. Nothing beats practice. You'll never get perfect at hard conversations, but you will get better as you go. Luckily, you can practice on your loved ones or your staff. We actually have a deck of cards called the Two-Brain Scenario deck for this precise purpose and to make it a little bit fun. You're going to feel funny asking others to role play with you, but it's worth practicing, and practicing on neutral parties will save you the painful and expensive practice that comes in real life. And that's how you bring clarity to the people around you, through open, honest conversations even when they're hard. And that's what a leader does.